Barbara Njau, Senior Reporter and Market Editor of FDI Magazine, which is part of the Financial Times Limited's FDI Intelligence Specialist Division. Welcome to this FDI discussion video, and I'm joined here by Wouter Schuitemaker. He is the Investment Director for Marketing Birmingham in the UK. This is Birmingham City's strategic marketing partnership that operates Birmingham's leisure and tourism programs, as well as its inward investment program called Business Birmingham. We're pleased at FDI to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
So, Wouter,
Yeah.
there's been much talk of the UK's economy flatlining.
Yeah.
So, recent GDP figures released this year in the first quarter of 2013 show that that UK's economy grew by just 0.3%.
Yeah.
So, is this a concern to you?
Clearly, we'd like to see a buoyant UK economy that's going to help us in terms of attracting inward investment. But in terms of Birmingham and the West Midlands, I mean, we're exporting above the UK average, and we're exporting importantly to growth economies, India and China increasingly, and more than the rest of the UK. So from that perspective, things are really strong and positive. And actually, in terms of what we're seeing coming into Birmingham in terms of inward investments, there's hugely increased interest in the city and the city region. So the areas, I think, importantly, that we're looking to attract are still pretty buoyant and, to a degree, resilient to the economic downturn.
It's interesting that you mentioned growth economies. So is Birmingham positioning itself also to attract investment from emerging economies? You mentioned India. So are the BRICS going to feature prominently in your outlook?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's important to note that the US, North America, is still our largest investor in the Midlands. That's replicated in the UK. About 45% of my pipeline in terms of the project we work on at Business Birmingham is from North America, predominantly from the US. And you know, that's continues to be our most important market, but increasingly India and China are areas that are returning investment for us, and to reflect that, I now have overseas presence in 5 key markets: North America, as you'd expect, but also Germany, India, China, and recently Australia.
So how would you evaluate Birmingham's FDI performance so far this year, and what do you anticipate will be different from 2012?
Well, in fiscal year 11-12, because that's how we tend to measure our numbers, we registered a record number of projects into the city. That was a 40% increase on the previous year. And again, we've just closed off the figures for the financial year for 12-13, and we've repeated that again, a 40% increase year on year and a record number of projects. So we've brought in at the end of the year just under 40 projects from overseas. That's notwithstanding the investment that comes from UK-based companies as well, whom we also work with. But the figures are very positive for Birmingham, and I think probably the most important thing is that it's the jobs that are associated with that. I mean, my main KPI or target, as it were, is to create employment for the city of Birmingham and the wider region. And the new job figures and the jobs from expansions of existing companies is greater than we've ever seen into the city. Great.
So it's interesting you mentioned that you recorded a record year for last year, because according to FDI Markets, which is FDI Magazine's Greenfield Investment Database, FDI to Birmingham, so in terms of capital expenditure, has actually declined from a peak in 2008 of around 2 billion. And last year it only registered around 473 million. So how is Birmingham marketing itself internationally to try and reverse this?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that what we're talking about is capital investment. So there's been some fairly large property deals in recent years. The acquisitions of developments like Brindley Place and other parts of the city, which have skewed the numbers in certain years. But as I said, the important thing for us in terms of greenfield investment would be the FDI projects, the new companies setting up, not necessarily real estate transactions, and also the jobs that are associated with that, and the outlook there, and the figures are really good. We are looking now as a city at how we couple capital investment attraction and the attraction of end occupiers or end users in terms of those companies that will actually inhabit the space in the office buildings and plants and so on and so forth around the city. And clearly, our presence at things like MIPIM are a really important way of doing that. But increasingly, we're looking into broader spectrums as to how we do that and how we link inward investment attraction with capital investment attraction. And I don't think there are many places around the world that really do that very well at the moment. They're seen as fairly separate entities or skill sets. And so we're working with the City Council of Birmingham, which is the largest local authority in Europe, to look at how we actually attract in capital investment, which is going to drive the inward investment as well.
So when you say Birmingham is going to have a broader spectrum of what they're going to look at in terms of FDI attraction, can you tell me a bit more about that?
Well, we already have a fixed strategy in terms of the sectors that we're looking to approach. Clearly, we're known as a region for our manufacturing base, and we would be foolish not to play on that. And we have Jaguar Land Rover, one of the massive UK success stories in terms of the growth of that company, and that's creating all sorts of opportunity for the supply chain. So we're seeing companies from Japan, from Korea, from the US who are tapping into the opportunity and the growth around Jaguar Land Rover, so investing and reinvesting in the city. But beyond that, we look at other sectors that will create large amounts of jobs for the city of Birmingham. So as a large city, we clearly have a need not only to create employment in high value parts of the economy, high value sectors, we also need to attract in large job creating sectors. So for the first time, I think, in terms of a real focus, we're looking at logistics, food and drink, and distribution as areas that can create large amounts of jobs, and also entry-level jobs, because it's important not to forget that the workforce is varied, and there's a number of different varied requirements across that. Separately, we're also putting a lot of investment into areas such as our life sciences capabilities, and we have huge expertise, particularly around oncology and diabetes in the University Hospital of Birmingham, and its links through Birmingham Health Partners with the University of Birmingham. And so we're looking at the campus, the life sciences campus around the part of the city that's called Edgbaston, which can drive forward new growth. And our US pipeline at the moment is absolutely awash with life sciences companies, both small medtech, medical devices companies, and larger companies looking at how they might benefit from the growth in the Birmingham area.
So I'm aware that Birmingham has set up some enterprise zones.
Yeah.
So I'd be very interested to know how will they contribute to Birmingham's investment promotion efforts?
Well, that's absolutely linked into the strategy that we've built out around sectors. So we've done a lot of work over the last 2 years in particular to look at the sectors that will generate large levels of employment, as I've said, but also be able to attract in new FDI from overseas, because really, in terms of an injection of new input into the economy, we need to look to overseas companies that can come into the region for the first time. And so what we've done is we've linked the spatial strategy of the city, so the planning of the city, with the sectors that we're looking to attract. And that culminated in 6 economic zones around the city, across automotive supply chain, food and drink, renewable energy, life sciences, and then in the city centre, digital and creative media, and business, professional and financial services. So we have bespoke hubs, bespoke economic zones around the city in the right locations for those type of businesses. And we've created space which is tailored to their requirements, both from a logistical perspective, but also from the kind of support networks, whether it be financial or recruitment and talent provision perspectives and linkages into the universities and the further education institutions. But the enterprise zone in the city centre is somewhat unique in that it's the largest enterprise zone that's in a city centre in the UK. And so we've gone a slightly different way to the rest of the UK, where most of them are in industrial sites or by the airport or out in areas that are away from the main city, and focused it on business, professional, financial services, digital media, where we know those companies want to be in the city centre to tap into the talent pool. We're also very lucky that we have Aston University, University of Birmingham, Birmingham City University, 3 major universities right in the city centre. as well as another couple of universities that have gained university status in the last year. So 5 universities that are city centre based, and we know that that's the talent pool that they're looking to tap into. A good example, whilst not an FDI, is ASOS. It's one of the largest and fastest growing online retailers in the UK, a fashion retailer. You may well be familiar with it.
Yes, I am.
It's chosen to put 2 what it calls scrum teams into Birmingham, which are effectively the teams that will build out their global websites. So they're going global into Australia and Germany and other markets, and they're without going into too much detail, they need to build the seasonality into their websites, which they don't currently have. And they've chosen to do that in Birmingham because they can't find the talent in London, and they can't find the talent at the right cost. They're a Camden-based headquartered company, and that's where they'll be headquartered, but they're now increasingly looking to Birmingham to source new talent, and they're looking to hire up to 100 new roles in the Birmingham area. So that's a real confidence boost or a sign of the confidence in the city in terms of the ability to find the right talent.
Interesting. It sounds like Marketing Birmingham has a very integrated approach in terms of development, because everything is happening in all one hub, whilst also you offer the cost effectiveness that other locations within the UK might not have.
Yeah, I think we like to think of it as clearly our proximity to London helps, and in the case of ASOS, they came to Birmingham because it was within easy reach of their Camden headquarters, and they could find the right people. But we like to think that Birmingham's probably the best placed city in the UK outside the capital in terms of connectivity, talent and workforce, but mostly the scale. So we have the universities, we have 5 universities, we have the graduate pool, and we have the industry makeup. We have the large clusters of companies that are based in the city. So we think that comes together quite well, and having the largest local authority in Europe and the ability to tap into some of the contractual opportunities around the procurement that the city council is doing, that's really important for our investors, and we're seeing particularly large Indian BPO providers looking at the type of opportunity in the market that they can tap into, and then can set up an operation on the back of that.
So that's a great note to end on. Thank you very much for your time, Wouter, and thank you for tuning in to FDI's video broadcast.